July 4, 1943, Eastern Front, near the village of Butovo, south of Kursk. Dawn has not yet broken, but the earth is already trembling. Oberstleutnant Karl von Lüttwitz stands half-submerged in a forward trench, boots sunk deep in the black Russian soil. The air smells of oil, sweat and crushed grass. Somewhere behind him, a Maybach engine coughs, then settles into a low mechanical growl. A Panzer IV is warming up, its silhouette barely visible in the pre-dawn haze. Von Lüttwitz checks his watch. Chai hour is minutes away. Ahead of him lies the Kursk salient, a vast bulge in the Soviet lines, bristling with defenses. For weeks, German reconnaissance aircraft have photographed this ground. For weeks, intelligence officers have brought maps to Berlin, showing trench after trench, minefield after minefield, anti-tank guns dug in so deep only their muzzles are visible. And for weeks, the generals have warned Berlin. But the order came anyway. Operation Citadel. Von Lüttwitz has fought since Poland. He has crossed France, watched the Soviet Union reel in 1941, and seen the war turn savage in the winter outside Moscow. He knows the sound of an unprepared enemy. This is not that sound. From the darkness ahead comes a low, distant rumble, not engines but artillery shifting position. Soviet artillery, waiting. At exactly 03:30, the night explodes. German artillery opens fire in a rolling thunder that stretches for miles. The ground convulses. Muzzle flashes strobe the horizon. For a moment, it feels like the familiar beginning of blitzkrieg. Shock, violence, momentum. Then, the Soviet guns answer. A wall of fire erupts from the salient. Shells crash into German assembly areas with brutal precision. A half-track behind von Lüttwitz is hit squarely, disappearing in a bloom of flame and screaming metal. Men scatter, slipping in mud and blood. This is not surprise. This is anticipation. As the sun rises, it reveals the scale of what lies ahead. Layered trench systems zigzag across the fields, anti-tank ditches slice through the earth, wooden posts mark minefields so dense they resemble forests. Von Lüttwitz whispers to no one. They knew. They did. They had known for months. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler had delayed this attack again and again. Originally planned for May, then June, then July. Each delay meant more time for the Red Army to prepare. Each delay was justified by promises. New tanks, new weapons, a decisive blow. The Panther, the Tiger, the Ferdinand tank destroyer. Weapons that, Hitler believed, would restore German superiority and crush the Soviet army in a single massive encirclement. But many of his generals saw the danger clearly. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein warned that delay was fatal. General Heinz Guderian, the architect of Germany's armored doctrine, was blunt. "Why attack at all?" he asked Hitler. "The enemy knows what we intend to do." Guderian had inspected the new Panther tanks himself. He knew they were rushed, mechanically unreliable, prone to engine fires. He argued Germany should go on the defensive, let the Red Army bleed itself against prepared lines. Hitler listened, then ignored him. By the summer of 1943, Germany no longer had the luxury of experimentation. Stalingrad had destroyed an entire army. Allied bombers were pounding the Reich. The Eastern Front was consuming men faster than they could be trained. Yet Hitler believed Kursk could reset the war. A single blow, a single victory. Reality, however, was waiting in the mud. South of Kursk, von Lüttwitz gives the order. The panzers move. Tiger tanks roll forward, their tracks chewing into the earth. Infantry follows closely, engineers probing for mines under fire. Within minutes, the advance slows to a crawl. Mine explosions tear off tracks. Anti-tank guns open up from concealed positions, firing at point-blank range. A Tiger lurches to a halt, immobilized but still firing. Soviet gunners swarm it, closing in with explosives. Smoke fills the air, thick and choking. This is not maneuver warfare. This is attrition. Above them, the sky becomes another battlefield. Luftwaffe fighters dive to suppress Soviet guns, only to be met by swarms of Red Air Force aircraft. The air is crowded, chaotic, tracers crisscrossing like glowing threads. The Germans push on, meter by meter, body by body. Every advance is paid for in blood. By midday, von Lüttwitz understands what this battle truly is. Not a breakthrough, a grinder. The Soviet defenses do not collapse. When one line is taken, another appears behind it. When German armor punches through, reserves counterattack almost immediately. This is defense in depth, carefully planned, ruthlessly executed. And somewhere far away, in a headquarters hundreds of miles from the front, Adolf Hitler waits for news that will never come. A clean victory. A turning point. Instead, Kursk is becoming something else entirely, a place where Germany's best formations are being consumed, slowly, relentlessly, by an enemy who has learned from every defeat. As the sun sets on July 4th, the battlefield is littered with burning tanks, shattered equipment, and men who will never leave this place. Von Lüttwitz lights a cigarette with trembling hands. He stares toward the Soviet lines, still intact, still firing. Tomorrow the order will come to attack again, and again, and again. July 5th, 1943. Southern face of the Kursk salient, near Yakovlevo. The morning arrives wrapped in smoke. It hangs low over the fields, blurring the wreckage of yesterday into dark, twisted silhouettes. Burned-out panzer hulls sit half-sunk in craters like carcasses abandoned by the tide. Somewhere to the east, Soviet artillery continues its slow, methodical pounding, not to stop the Germans outright, but to keep them tense, exhausted, awake. Oberstleutnant von Lüttwitz has not slept. His regiment has advanced less than 5 kilometers since the attack began. 5 kilometers bought with dozens of tanks and hundreds of men. The maps in his command vehicle are already outdated, marked with grease pencil corrections and hastily crossed-out objectives. At 06 Mau, the order arrives. Attack resumes immediately. No pause, no regrouping. The panzers roll forward again, engines roaring in defiance of the mines beneath them. Engineers move ahead on foot, crouched low, metal detectors sweeping the ground. They find one mine and then another, then another. The Soviets have buried them in layers: anti-tank mines, anti-personnel mines, booby traps wired to corpses and abandoned equipment. Every step forward is a gamble. A Panther tank hits a mine and erupts in flame, its engine catching instantly. The crew scrambles out, only to be cut down by machine gun fire from a trench they never saw. The Soviet defenses are invisible until they are lethal, and they go back for miles. Far from the battlefield, in the Wolf's Lair headquarters in East Prussia, Adolf Hitler pores over situation maps. Red and blue arrows twist across the paper. Reports arrive hourly, advances measured in hundreds of meters, losses measured in battalions. Field Marshal von Manstein requests freedom of maneuver. He wants to exploit small gains, shift armor to weak points, avoid the strongest defenses. Hitler refuses. The plan must be followed. Citadel must succeed. To stop now, he believes, would be worse than defeat. It would be an admission that Germany no longer controls events. General Guderian, summoned again to advise, is alarmed. The Panthers are failing exactly as he warned. Nearly half are out of action. Many not destroyed by the enemy but broken down, engines overheated, transmissions ruined. These tanks are not ready, Guderian insists. Hitler waves the concern aside. They will prove themselves, he says. At Kursk they already are, proving how irreplaceable German armor has become. By mid-morning the battle intensifies. Soviet counterattacks slam into German spearheads with brutal timing. T-34s appear suddenly from concealed positions, firing on the move. Their crews are younger, less experienced, but they are many, very many. German gunners knock them out by the dozen, but for every Soviet tank destroyed, another rolls forward. Smoke and dust obscure the battlefield. Radios crackle with overlapping reports. Units lost, flanks exposed, ammunition running low. This is not chaos. This is design. Marshal Georgy Zhukov's plan is working exactly as intended. The Germans are being drawn in, fixed in place, forced to commit their elite units again and again against prepared killing zones. Every Tiger destroyed cannot be replaced. Every veteran crew lost is a wound that will never heal. The Red Army can afford losses. Germany cannot. By afternoon, temperatures climb above 30 degrees Celsius. Inside tanks, it is unbearable. Crews stripped down to undershirts, sweat pouring into their eyes as they load shells and wrestle overheated machinery. A Tiger commander reports that his gun barrel is worn smooth from constant firing. Accuracy is degrading. Spare barrels are days away, if they exist at all. Soviet artillery shifts again. A creeping barrage rolls forward, forcing German infantry to hug the ground as shrapnel tears through the air. Medics crawl among the wounded, dragging men back under fire. Some scream, some are silent. The battlefield no longer feels like an offensive. It feels like a trap, closing slowly. Von Lüttwitz watches through binoculars as a Soviet anti-tank gun reveals itself, fires once, twice, then disappears back into its dugout. German return fire hits nothing but empty earth. "They're bleeding us," one of his officers mutters. He does not disagree. That evening, Luftwaffe aircraft attempt to break the deadlock. Stukas dive screaming toward Soviet positions, but the sky is no longer German territory. Red Air Force fighters rise to meet them. Anti-aircraft guns fill the air with black bursts. Losses are heavy. The Luftwaffe, like the army below, is expending strength it cannot recover. As darkness falls, the guns do not stop. Soviet artillery fires through the night, denying rest. German units dig in where they stand, surrounded by wreckage and the smell of burned fuel. Somewhere in the darkness, Soviet engineers repair their own lines, reset mines, prepare the next belt of defense. Tomorrow, the Germans will attack again, and the day after that, because Hitler has not yet accepted what his generals already know. This battle cannot be won. It can only be survived, or endured until there is nothing left to endure with. July 12, 1943. Prokhorovka, 05:45 hours. The ground shakes before the sun rises. Not from artillery this time, but from engines, hundreds of them, roaring at once. Diesel and gasoline fumes hang thick in the morning air, mixing with dust kicked up by tracks grinding over dry earth. Hauptmann Franz Staudiger grips the rim of his Tiger tank's commander cupola, eyes fixed forward. Ahead lies a shallow valley, broken by railway embankments and scattered ravines. On the far side, the Red Army is already moving. They are not defending, they are charging. Out of the haze come Soviet tanks, T-34s and light T-70s, advancing at full speed, turrets traversing, guns firing wildly. They come so fast that the German gunners barely have time to range them. This is Prokhorovka, the collision point of two armored doctrines. Staudiger shouts orders down into the turret. The Tiger's 88mm gun fires, and a T-34 explodes in a flash of orange flame. Another round, another kill. The gunner is calm, methodical, almost detached. But the Soviets keep coming, distances collapse, tanks close to less than 100 meters, sometimes 50. Shells ricochet, steel screams. The battlefield dissolves into chaos, where formations mean nothing, and survival depends on seconds. A T-34 slams into the side of a Panzer IV, crushing it against the embankment. A Soviet tank rams a Tiger head-on, sacrificing itself to disable the heavier machine. Infantry scatter between the armored giants, firing Panzerfausts and anti-tank rifles at point-blank range. This is not a clean battle. It is a brawl. The Soviet attack is deliberate. Marshal Rotmistrov has ordered his 5th Guards tank army forward in a massive frontal assault, not because it is elegant, but because it denies the Germans their advantage in long-range gunnery. At close range, the Tiger's optics and firepower matter less. The battlefield is too tight, too crowded, too violent. German crews report targets everywhere. Radio discipline breaks down. Commands overlap. Smoke blinds optics. Dust coats lenses. Tanks fire at silhouettes, at movement, at anything that might be alive. Above, aircraft dive and climb in swirling patterns, dropping bombs dangerously close to friendly units. Anti-aircraft guns fire into the chaos, indifferent to what they might hit. This is the largest tank battle in history, not because of its precision, but because of its sheer grinding mass, and it is bleeding Germany dry. By midday, the valley is a graveyard. Burning tanks dot the landscape in every direction. Black smoke columns rise and merge into a single dark canopy. Wrecks lie nose to nose, track to track, some still smouldering, others already cold. Staudiger's Tiger has fired nearly all its ammunition. The barrel is worn. The engine temperature is dangerously high. His crew is exhausted, half-deaf, their faces blackened with soot. They have destroyed dozens of enemy tanks. It does not matter. Soviet formations continue to arrive. Fresh units roll forward from behind the lines, reserves the Germans cannot see, cannot reach, cannot stop. The Red Army is trading steel for time, and time is something Germany no longer has. Hundreds of kilometers away in the Wolf's Lair, Hitler receives the first full reports from Prokhorovka. Losses are heavy on both sides. Gains are minimal. The breakthrough he demanded has not occurred. Then another report arrives. Allied forces have landed in Sicily, July 10, 1943. A second front, not in France yet, but close enough to terrify the Italian leadership and stretch German resources even thinner. The war is widening again. Hitler's attention fractures. The Kursk offensive, already faltering, is no longer the only crisis demanding his control. By the evening of July 12th, German attacks around Prokhorovka slow, then stop. Units dig in amid the wreckage. Crews sleep inside their tanks, surrounded by the dead and dying. For the first time since the offensive began, there is no order to advance. Silence replaces motion, and in that silence, a truth begins to settle across the German command structure. Even if they continue, even if they push harder, there is no decisive victory waiting beyond the next ridge. Only more Soviet defenses, more reserves, more losses. At Prokhorovka, the Wehrmacht has not been destroyed, but something else has been. The illusion that Germany can still choose the course of the war. July 13, 1943. Wolf's Lair headquarters, East Prussia. The air inside the briefing room is heavy, stale with cigarette smoke and tension. Maps cover the long table, their edges curled from constant handling. Red pins and blue arrows crowd the Kursk salient, marking advances so small they are almost meaningless. Loss figures sit in neat columns, each number carrying the weight of men and machines that no longer exist. Adolf Hitler stands at the head of the table, rigid, his hands clasped behind his back. Field Marshal von Manstein waits. So do the others. Keitel, Jodl, senior officers who have learned to measure every word. They know the offensive is failing. They know it has been failing for days. What they do not know is whether Hitler will admit it. A courier enters, salutes and hands Hitler a folder. Sicily again, Italian resistance collapsing, Allied troops pushing inland. Hitler opens the folder, skims it, then closes it slowly. The room is silent. Finally, he speaks. The situation in the Mediterranean requires immediate attention. No one argues, but Manstein steps forward anyway. Kursk must be concluded now, he says carefully. Our armored formations are exhausted. If we disengage, we can still preserve their combat value. Preserve. The word hangs in the air. Hitler turns, his expression hard. We are on the verge of victory, he insists. The enemy has committed everything. It is not true, but it is what he needs to believe. July 13th, 1943, near Prokhorovka. The order reaches the front late in the afternoon. Operations are to be halted. No further major attacks. Units are to hold their current positions and prepare to disengage. Oberstleutnant von Luttwitz reads the message twice, then folds the paper carefully and slips it into his pocket. Around him the battlefield lies quiet for the first time in days, not peaceful, but exhausted. German tank crews climb out of their machines, stretching stiff limbs, staring across ground they have paid dearly to gain and will soon abandon. They have not broken through. They have not encircled anything. They have simply survived. In the north of the salient, the story is no different. General Model S 9th Army has made even less progress than Manstein-IS forces in the south. Soviet defenses have held firm. Losses are severe. Momentum is gone. The offensive is over. And with it, Germany's last chance to regain the strategic initiative on the Eastern Front. The Red Army does not wait. Within days, Soviet counter-offensives erupt along the entire front. Fresh formations smash into exhausted German units, pushing them back from the ground they bled to reach. Operation Kutuzov, Operation Rumyantsev, names that will soon be associated with relentless Soviet advance. German commanders request permission to retreat to shorter, defensible lines. Hitler hesitates, then refuses. Not one step back. The words echo a Soviet slogan, bitter irony not lost on those who hear it. Late July 1943, Eastern Front. Von Lutwitz's regiment pulls back under pressure, fighting rearguard actions through villages reduced to rubble. Fuel is scarce. Replacement crews are green. The veterans, those who remain, are silent. They have seen what attrition looks like. They have lived it. Tigers that once symbolized invincibility are now few and precious, withdrawn from constant combat to prevent total loss. Panthers, once hailed as war winners, are sidelined for repairs that may never come. The Red Army, meanwhile, grows stronger by the week. Factories beyond the Urals pour out tanks and guns in numbers the Germans can barely comprehend. Kursk was meant to destroy Soviet armored strength. Instead, it has revealed its depth. Back in Berlin, the propaganda machine spins furiously. Kursk is portrayed as a defensive success, a blow against Bolshevik aggression. Losses are minimized. Reality is buried beneath words. But among the generals, there is no illusion left. They know what Kursk means. From now on, Germany will fight retreat after retreat, reacting instead of dictating. The war has passed a point of no return. And it happened not in a single dramatic collapse, but in fields of mines, in burning valleys, and in a decision to attack when every warning said not to. August 1943, Kharkov region, Eastern Front. Rain turns the roads into rivers of mud. German columns withdraw under constant pressure, vehicles bogging down, horses collapsing, men pushing where engines fail. Soviet artillery harasses them day and night, not always to destroy but to exhaust. Every pause is punished, every mistake is fatal. Major Otto Schenk rides in a staff car, clutching a map that is now more memory than reality. The front line shifts faster than the ink can dry. Villages that were German positions days ago are now Soviet strongpoints. This is no longer a fighting retreat. It is containment, trying to slow something unstoppable. At Kharkov, once again, the Germans are forced to abandon a city they had fought over bitterly since 1941. No triumphal counterstroke follows. No sudden reversal. The Red Army pushes in with confidence born from Kursk. They know now. The Germans can be beaten head-on. In the weeks after Kursk, casualty reports arrive at OKH in relentless waves. Entire armored battalions reduced to paper strength. Veteran NCOs, the backbone of the Wehrmacht, gone. And there are no replacements of equal quality. Training times are shortened. Crews are rushed to the front with barely enough hours in their machines. Commanders who once led platoons now command companies, not by promotion, but by survival. The elite is gone, burned away in the fields south of Kursk. Adolf Hitler retreats further into isolation. Briefings become monologues. Maps are redrawn to fit decisions already made. When generals argue for elastic defense, Hitler responds with ideology. The German soldier does not retreat, he says, but the German soldier is retreating, whether ordered to or not, because the alternative is annihilation. Field Marshal Manstein tries one last time to restore flexibility, proposing mobile defense and controlled withdrawals. He is tolerated, then sidelined. By early 1944, he will be dismissed entirely. The man who saw Kursk's danger clearly is removed. The war continues without listening. Across the Eastern Front, the pattern repeats. Soviet offensives strike, pause, then strike again, deeper each time. German units fall back from prepared line to prepared line, each weaker than the last. Equipment shortages become chronic. Fuel becomes precious. The initiative is gone, forever. What Kursk destroyed was not just tanks. It destroyed time. Winter, 1943-1944. Eastern Front. Snow falls on positions that were never meant to be defended. Trenches are shallow, fortifications incomplete. Men wrap themselves in anything they can find. They remember Kursk. They remember the minefields, the endless reserves. The moment when they realized the enemy was no longer improvising, but mastering the art of war Germany once owned. Kursk was not a single defeat. It was a verdict. The generals warned him. They warned him about delay. They warned him about the defenses. They warned him about the cost. Hitler attacked anyway, and after Kursk, the war would only move in one direction, westward, toward Germany itself. June 1944. Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. The maps no longer show ambition, they show containment. Red arrows push westward across Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltic states. German lines bend, then snap, then are redrawn farther back. The Eastern Front, once the arena of sweeping maneuvers and bold encirclements, has become a series of emergency measures. Adolf Hitler stands over the table again. Older now, thinner, his left hand trembling uncontrollably. Kursk is nearly a year behind him, but it never left him. Every crisis since traces back to that decision. On June 22, 1944, exactly 3 years after Germany invaded the Soviet Union, the Red Army launches Operation Bagration. It is not a single blow. It is annihilation. Entire German formations vanish in days. Army Group Center is shattered beyond recovery. Over 300,000 men are killed, wounded, or captured. The scale dwarfs even Stalingrad. German commanders send desperate messages requesting permission to withdraw. Hitler refuses. Again, the doctrine born at Kursk, hold at all costs, now destroys what little remains of Germany as field army. Veterans who survived Kursk recognize the pattern immediately. The deep defenses, the overwhelming artillery, the reserves appearing exactly where needed. What once shocked them has now become routine. The Red Army has mastered operational warfare. Germany no longer dictates tempo, location, or outcome. It reacts, always too late. In the West, the Allies land in Normandy on June 6, 1944. Germany is now fighting a two-front war again, the scenario Hitler swore he would never repeat. Armor that might have counterattacked in France was lost at Kursk. Veteran crews who might have stiffened defenses are buried in Russian soil. Every absence is felt. Every loss echoes backward to that summer in 1943, January 1945. Eastern Germany. Soviet forces cross into the Reich. Cities that once cheered German victories now brace for artillery barrages. Civilians flee westward through snow and chaos. The war that Hitler promised would never reach Germany is now everywhere. The generals no longer argue strategy. They argue survival. Some quietly acknowledge what they have known since Kursk. The war was lost there, not in one moment, but in one decision. April 1945, Berlin. In a bunker beneath the ruined city, Hitler studies a final set of maps. There are no reserves left to move, no elite formations to commit, no miracles waiting to arrive, only arrows closing in. The silence between artillery strikes is broken by memory, of warnings ignored, of generals dismissed, of a battle fought against time itself. Kursk was the moment Germany chose defiance over reality, and reality never forgave it. Summer 1943, German Army Headquarters. The reports are quieter now, not fewer, just quieter. There is no panic in the language, no dramatic appeals, just numbers, tables, gaps where units should be. Kursk has ended, but its accounting has only begun. Panzer divisions once considered elite now exist in name only. A regiment that should field 150 tanks lists 30, many awaiting repair that will never come. Veteran crews are marked missing or killed, their replacements barely trained, unfamiliar with the machines they are expected to master under fire. Kursk did not destroy the German army in a single stroke. It hollowed it out. General Heinz Guderian reviews readiness reports weeks after the battle. He had warned Hitler that the new tanks were not ready, that the timing was wrong, that the enemy was prepared. Now the evidence is undeniable. The Panther, intended to dominate the battlefield, has proven unreliable under sustained combat. The Tiger remains formidable, but there are too few of them, and too few men left who know how to use them to full effect. What Germany loses at Kursk is not just equipment, it is experience. And experience cannot be rebuilt quickly, not in war, and not with the clock already against you. On the Soviet side, the mood is entirely different. Marshal Zhukov studies his own losses, enormous by any measure, and accepts them without hesitation. The Red Army has done what it needed to do. It has stopped the Germans cold. More than that, it has proven it can absorb a blow from Germany's best and keep moving forward. The myth of German operational superiority, carefully cultivated since 1939, lies broken in the dust south of Kursk. Soviet commanders no longer fear German armor. They plan around it, Autumn 1943, Eastern Front. German units dig in along the Dnieper River, attempting to build a defensive line strong enough to halt the Soviet advance. It is an admission, unspoken but absolute, that the days of deep offensive operations are over. There will be no more grand encirclements, no more sweeping advances, only resistance. The Red Army crosses the Dnieper anyway. Within the German officer corps, Kursk becomes a reference point, never spoken aloud but always understood. Before Kursk, there was still debate. After Kursk, there is resignation. Commanders still fight skillfully. Soldiers still show discipline and courage. But the belief that effort alone can change the outcome is gone. They are fighting to delay, to buy time. For what? No one is entirely sure. Hitler, however, refuses the lesson. He continues to believe that willpower can replace material, that ideology can overcome mathematics. Each retreat is blamed on disloyalty, weakness, or lack of faith. Never on the decision itself, never on Kursk. But the war does not care what he believes. By 1944, Germany's enemies control the air, the seas, and the initiative on land. The Reich is squeezed from every direction. Factories are bombed, fuel disappears, trained manpower evaporates, and every shortage traces a line backward, to Stalingrad, to Kursk, to moments when the warnings were clear and ignored. Kursk was not Germany's last battle, but it was the last time Germany chose where the battle would be fought. After that summer, the Wehrmacht would fight only where it was forced to fight, and always with less than it needed. The generals had warned him, the maps had warned him, time itself had warned him. Hitler attacked anyway. July 1943. The Eastern Front. After the guns fall silent, the battlefield is quiet in a way that feels unnatural, not peaceful, emptied. Crows circle above burned-out tanks. The wind moves through tall grass, flattened by tracks and explosions. Scattered helmets, torn maps, and spent shell casings lie where men dropped them days ago. This ground will never be reclaimed by Germany. It doesn't need to be conquered by the Soviets again. It has already done its work. Kursk has decided something irreversible. For the first time since 1939, Germany has launched a major offensive and failed completely to achieve its strategic objective. Not delayed, not blunted, failed. No encirclement, no collapse of the enemy front, no panic in Soviet command. Instead, the Red Army absorbs the blow, counters at will, and drives the Germans backward on its own timetable. The balance of power has shifted, quietly, definitively. In the months that follow, German generals privately speak of before Kursk and after Kursk. Before Kursk, there was still hope that a bold stroke might change the course of the war. After Kursk, that hope vanishes. From now on, every German operation is reactive, every plan is constrained by shortages, every decision is shaped by fear of collapse somewhere else. Germany is no longer fighting for victory. It is fighting to postpone defeat. Adolf Hitler never publicly admits the significance of Kursk. There is no speech, no reckoning. Instead, he shifts blame, replaces commanders, and doubles down on control. The tighter his grip becomes, the faster everything slips away. What he refuses to see is simple and fatal. Wars are not won by belief. They are won by resources, timing, and adaptation. At Kursk, Germany had none of these. The generals had warned him. They warned that delay favored the Soviets. They warned that the defenses were unprecedented. They warned that Germany's elite formations were irreplaceable. They warned that the risk outweighed the reward. Hitler heard them all and chose to attack anyway. History does not judge Kursk by a single day or a single clash of tanks. It judges Kursk as the moment when Germany lost the ability to shape events. From that summer onward, the direction of the war was fixed. The Red Army would advance. The Allies would land in the west, and Germany would fight harder and harder, for less and less. Kursk was not the loudest defeat. It was the most decisive, because it ended something Germany would never regain. Choice. Post-war Germany, late 1940s. The maps are unrolled again, and this time on bare wooden tables in ruined offices, schools, and temporary headquarters. The uniforms are gone. So is the shouting. What remains are memories, testimony, and a need to explain how it all went wrong. Former German generals are questioned by Allied historians. Again and again, the conversation circles back to the same place. Kursk, not Stalingrad, not Normandy, not Berlin. Kursk. They speak carefully, choosing words stripped of ideology. They describe a moment when the logic of war was clear and ignored, when the enemy's preparations were known, when delay turned opportunity into inevitability. For many of them, Kursk is not remembered as a battle. It is remembered as a decision. Heinz Guderian writes later that Operation Citadel should never have been launched. Manstein, more measured, still acknowledges that the delay doomed it. Others admit, in private if not in print, that the German army crossed a line at Kursk, from calculated risk into strategic denial. They had built an army designed for movement. At Kursk, it was ordered to smash itself against certainty. Soviet officers tell a different story, but one that reaches the same conclusion. For them, Kursk is proof. Proof that the Red Army has learned, adapted, and surpassed its enemy. Proof that German armor can be stopped, fixed in place, and destroyed. Proof that the war can be taken west, all the way to Berlin. After Kursk, Soviet planning becomes more confident, more ambitious, more relentless. They are no longer surviving the war. They are directing it. Military academies decades later. Kursk is studied not for heroism, but for warning. It is taught as the danger of attacking a prepared enemy, of mistaking technology for strategy, of believing that willpower can substitute for logistics, intelligence, and time. And above all, it is taught as a lesson in leadership. When commanders stop listening, when ideology replaces assessment, when warnings are treated as weakness, the result is not dramatic collapse. It is slow, irreversible loss. In the end, Kursk did not destroy Germany in a single summer. It simply ensured that nothing afterward could save it. The generals warned him, the enemy prepared, time ran out, and history closed the door, quietly, firmly, in the fields south of Kursk. Eastern Europe, long after the war. The fields around Kursk look ordinary now. Wheat grows where minefields once lay. Roads cut across ground that swallowed thousands of vehicles. Villages have been rebuilt, their foundations resting on layers of metal, bone, and memory. But the soil remembers. Farmers still turn up twisted fragments of steel with their plows. Children find shell casings in ditches. Occasionally, a rusted helmet emerges after heavy rain, a silent reminder that this land once decided the fate of continents. Kursk never truly ended. For Germany, the consequences unfold slowly, almost invisibly. There is no single day when defeat becomes obvious, no moment when everything collapses at once. Instead, there is a steady erosion of options, of strength, of belief. After Kursk, every German victory is local. Every defeat is permanent. The officers who survived carry the knowledge quietly. They recognize the signs as the war continues. At Bagration, in Normandy, in the Ardennes, the same pattern repeats. Overwhelming enemy preparation, deep reserves, relentless pressure. They know why it feels familiar. They have seen this movie before. It started at Kursk. Adolf Hitler never revisits the decision openly. In his final months, he speaks of betrayal, of lost faith, of enemies too numerous to defeat. He does not speak of timing or preparation or listening, but the silence itself is revealing, because Kursk was not an accident. It was a choice. History often remembers wars by their endings, the fall of Berlin, the surrender ceremonies, the photographs. But wars are rarely decided at the end. They are decided when momentum changes hands, when one side stops shaping events and begins reacting to them. For Germany, that moment came not in defeat, but in defiance, in launching an attack everyone warned against. Kursk stands as one of history's clearest lessons, not about tanks, not about numbers, but about leadership under pressure, when warnings are inconvenient, when reality contradicts belief, when stopping feels more dangerous than continuing. The generals warned him. They warned him clearly. And when the order came anyway, history began moving in only one direction, slowly, relentlessly, toward an ending that no amount of willpower could prevent.